penultimate episode of the season. Somebody dies. Misty finds a reason to get back into the fold, and we get the first signs of the girls learning that they're capable of being cannibalistic. In our first topic, we're going to talk about Adam, Jeff, and Shauna, and how Shauna handles Adam and even Jeff in terms of feeling like they betrayed her. With Adam, she finds herself going through all of his things because she's under the impression that her journals were taken. He's the one who stole the money, and the only thing she finds is the book about the Yellowjackets, and to her, that's all she needs. Because in her mind, that's what proves that Adam has been researching her, that she was a mark, and that he essentially is the one who caused all of this. So, with that in mind, and her feeling threatened, and not only that, her feeling kind of foolish in the moment, she stabs him. Now, was it stabbing like she wanted to intentionally murder him? Not really. But as we see Shauna go between herself 25 years in the present to 25 years in the past, you can tell that she's definitely triggered, and perhaps similar to how we've seen her kind of switch on when it comes to killing rabbits and other animals. That's what happened in the moment, and with that, Adam is now dead on the floor. Then, once that's all done, Sean returns home, and then comes a quite interesting surprise. First, all of Shauna's notebooks, her journals, are back in the safe. And then when she talks to Jeff, strangely, both of them come forward with all the stuff they've been hiding. Jeff talks about how he was the person that was blackmailing Natalie and Taissa, and the main reason he did that is because his store, the furniture store, has an online competitor that's been kicking their ass for who knows how long. So rather than get a bank loan, take some type of loan out of the market value of the house, he goes to some kind of loan sharks. And from what we're told, the woman that he was with in a hotel, that woman's name was, I want to say, Bianca. And while Shauna thinks, oh, that's the person he's having an affair with, no, she's just the one to make sure that he pays them off. And apparently she's quite terrifying. All of this information doesn't go questioned by Shauna, since it kind of makes sense. But what she doesn't really take note of until after she says it, because she accuses him of cheating and just reveals that she's cheating, his confession leads to him needing to ask, Coda, what were you doing? And with that, you can see that Shauna, she doesn't feel like hiding anymore. She tells pretty much everything that happened with Adam, from the cheating to her just murdering him to thinking that he was the blackmailer. And with that, you get a sense that despite how distant sometimes Jeff seems, I would say that their issues as a couple hasn't really affected the foundation of their relationship. So while they may not be as intimate as they used to be, I would say that Jeff still sees Shauna as one of the people he's closest to. And yes, Randy helped him with the blackmailing thing, and that's his male best friend, but in terms of partner, that's still Shauna. And that's probably why he's willing to take the fall for her and have it where he goes to jail, make it seem like a crime of passion when it comes to Adam's death, and then have Shauna sell off all the inventory in order to support her and Callie as long as she can. The idea is sweet, but ultimately, both agree it's stupid. So instead, the idea is Taissa and Natalie are going to be told that Jeff was a blackmailer, and then as Yellowjackets, they're going to handle that. And Jeff, from what it seems, is going to be left out of it. Or at least in terms of Jeff, with him now knowing about Adam, and also it seems him being the one that took the books and read everything, he can fully know and understand who Shauna is and love her in spite of or despite of. And perhaps as she starts to bond with the Yellowjackets over this murder that got caused, her and Jeff can finally reach that place where they're back to, well, considering they started off the relationship with cheating on somebody, with Jackie in the middle, maybe they can kind of find a new place in their relationship where, despite the past, they can have a fruitful, loving, and affectionate present. Jumping into the past, with things being as I don't want to say tumultuous because that's probably making it a bit embellished, but I would I would definitely say that in the past there's this sense of incoming dread because winter's going to be coming soon. But thankfully, Mari has been trying to ferment some berries. So between her and of course Jackie, who's always looking for some type of party or event for everybody to do, so comes the Doomcoming. It's gonna be a party when they're decorating. Everybody's gonna put on the dresses they were supposed to put on for when they go out to Seattle, and even when it comes to some who are not really for it, like Van, because Taissa makes her a mask, since apparently Taissa's very good at arts and crafts, she even gets on board. But what was thought off as a good idea takes a left turn, and it's mainly because of course Misty has to be the one who takes things overboard and escalates them. She has some magic mushrooms that she was saving for whatever reason, and she decides after a chat with Jackie, she's gonna drug Ben again, but this time the drugging's gonna be so that he puts his boundaries down and they can be intimate. Because, his excuse is not that. Instead of just telling Misty that he's gay, his excuse has been, age, my position, yada, yada, yada. Problem is, once Misty gets that stuff, she leaves it on the counter while Mari is making her soup and the food for the event, because she's asked to go help Shauna put on her dress since, Shauna's starting to show and her dress is too tight. While she's up there, Mari takes the mushrooms, put it in the soup, and this leads to everybody but Jackie, since at this point Jackie doesn't seem to be eating nothing that isn't meat, which means she's not eating the worms that's being cooked, she doesn't touch the mushroom soup, she's just pretty much living off of water, I guess, at this point. But anyway, everybody else gets high. For some people, getting high it can be considered a good thing. Natalie and Ben getting high leads to Natalie being more open about Travis and really confiding in Ben. And I would say, if you add on that before everybody got high off of mushroom soup, Van and Taissa coming out, it kind of helped Ben think that maybe he can do so as well. Hence why when Misty comes around and Natalie goes off to go see Travis and possibly reconcile, he doesn't keep using the whole age thing or position thing. He just outright comes out to Misty that he's gay. Now, how did she take this, considering she was on mushrooms? It's hard to say. However, we do know that there is a possibility that she might have done something wicked, because while a lot of the girls, you can see stains on them because of the juice, there's also a question of whether or not Misty might have taken a bite out of Ben, maybe even tried to eat him, because switching to the sober Jackie and Travis, Jackie's at that point where, with knowing her best friend had sex with her boyfriend and got pregnant with him, and just feeling that her life is bullshit at this point, Travis doesn't look so bad as to be her first. And she's also in the mindset of, it doesn't matter who the first is. At this point, she just wants to experience sex. So, with Travis being in the mindset where he can't... Let me step back. It's not that he can't say no. It's just that Travis is in this mindset where you definitely can tell that he's messed up. So the idea of Jackie seducing him, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's not something that he really fights against. Granted, in the back of his mind, he's definitely thinking about Natalie, but he does the deed. There's no nervousness, there's no real care involved, and you could either see that as something dealing with the mushrooms, kind of taking away his inhibitions, or because he doesn't really give a damn about Jackie, the sex is empty, so he doesn't have to overthink it because he doesn't necessarily feel like he has to be good at it. Either way, they have sex, and then next thing that they know, Charlotte, Shauna, Marty, Akilah, they're downstairs going off on Jackie for having sex with somebody who's not hers, and Originally, you may think that it's because, they're defending Natalie and, just trying to keep drama from happening. But then, no sooner than they say all that, Jackie is locked into the closet that goes up to the attic. And then all the girls are kissing, licking, just having a real carnal, sensual moment when it comes to Travis. Which, for a second, he's kind of liking. But then things take a left because it seems the girls are going from satisfying their sensual desires to now wanting to fill their desires for meat and their hunger. And that makes Travis go from somebody who's attractive in terms of, him being the only viable male to him being a piece of meat in a literal sense. Thus, they start to see him as a stag, aka a deer, and they go to hunt him. Thankfully, by this time, before Shauna slices his throat, she's starting to lose her high and starting to see Travis as a person and not as a deer. Never mind, Natalie comes and interferes, and eventually Jackie, because of Natalie, was able to catch up and stop the situation. But you can definitely see, in terms of Travis's trauma, this is probably one of the reasons he got on drugs. Because he was this close from Shauna slicing his throat open, and you could even see blood coming from his neck because she was about to kill this man. Going back to 25 years in the present, finally it's election day after I don't know how many episodes since Halloween, which I'm still a bit mind-boggled by since it's not like election day jumps across the board when it comes to the general. It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday in the United States, so when was Halloween? Also, when it comes to time, should we consider the 25-year gap to be exactly that? So if it's November 8th in 2021, is it November 8th back in 96? I don't know. Let's get to the point. Shauna brings in Taissa and Natalie, sells them the story about Adam, and while Taissa is just in a state of shock, Natalie's asking some questions, but mainly because her former friend from AA still hasn't gotten information about Travis, and with Adam dead, now she doesn't even have a lead. Though, as is becoming very clear, the blackmailer and the person who killed Travis are not one and the same, which leaves you to question who killed Travis and why. Never mind, they close out his bank account, so could it be that the same loan sharks that Jeff was dealing with, maybe Travis was too? Could it be that Harvey, who we still have not yet seen, maybe he became an addict like his brother and his brother's girlfriend? It's just, when it comes to his path, he never kind of bounced back, since maybe nobody invested in him the same way that Taissa did in Natalie, or how Natalie did in Travis. It's very hard to say. All that we know for sure is that because Taissa was a lawyer when it comes to zoning and stuff like that, not for murder, so she ain't no Johnny Cochran. And Natalie, as much as she's a bit screwed up, she doesn't know how to discard a dead body, so they need to bring in Misty. The problem with that is Misty, with Jessica being probably the most consistent person in her life at this point, she's starting to get manipulated by Jessica to the idea of maybe telling the story of the Yellowjackets, and maybe even, well, I wouldn't say that she's going to let Jessica go because I don't think that she's that far along in terms of Jessica's manipulation, but you can definitely see that when it comes to her team, the loyalty she doesn't feel is there, and she's ready to just turn them in and think of herself. That is until Natalie shows up at her doorstep and gives a proper apology. One that pretty much owns all her shit and makes it so that when Natalie approaches her with the idea of helping her discard a dead body, she just chuckles like it's the simplest thing ever and she's down for the fun. So when it comes to questions left unanswered, some of the things I'm kind of wondering about is just like little detailed things more than big details. Like stupid things like, did Travis use a condom when it came to having sex with Jackie, especially considering the fact that with him out of his mind, would he even think about that? There's also the question of, we saw a few players that aren't Mari and Akilah when it comes to the likely JV team. Who are those people? Are we going to get to know them, or are they just going to be background actors for now? Also, I was kind of wondering, Taissa spoke about her relationship with Simone and said that they got married, or they've been married for 15 years, and I'm just trying to understand how that works, since when it comes to legalizing same-sex marriage in New Jersey, that wasn't until 2013, and 2 years later was nationwide. So is she talking about a civil union, but she's calling it a marriage because they later got married, or is she talking about the relationship as a whole as 15 years, and she sees throwing away the marriage as the same way she means it's throwing away the relationship for the campaign? Also, I'm kind of wondering at this point, when it comes to the Yellowjackets, what specifically is known about what happened to them? We know that there is some light version that's supposed to be harrowing about them experiencing hardship all in the wilderness, but I don't know what specific details people know. Only thing that's for sure is that when it comes to the Yellowjackets, people definitely assume they ate each other, just because. I mean, even though nobody talked, I'm sure they found bones and other things when they were discovered. Which also leads to the question, how did they get discovered? By who? And one of the last things I'm kind of wondering about, which again isn't really a big thing, is at what point will people realize that Shaw was on medication? Is she going to possibly tell them that she was on medication? Since I think at this point we can see that the power dynamics keep shifting every episode when it comes to the people in 96. Jackie, every now and then when it comes to a party or something that's fun, she gains a little bit of social equity, but then it gets diminished as soon as things get a little too real. Or in the case when she gets selfish in the moment. Taissa has leadership qualities that everybody likes, but between her failure that led to Van getting attacked, and then her being a bit of a Debbie Downer when it comes to what happened, not what happened, in terms of not really being for the party, it's not clear what her status is. And while her coming out definitely boosted her, it's not clear if that's going to be enough for people to forget that she took 4 members of the group and almost got them all killed. And there's no one else that has really stepped up to the point we can see them as a leader. Yes, Ben is still the adult of the situation, but as Laura Lee showed, there's a certain amount of respect he'll get in terms of him being the oldest and being coach. But if the girls really want to do something, they know he can't stop them. So his title is very much honorary, and it can be snatched at a moment's notice. Natalie, let's be real, Natalie's not trying to be anybody's leader. If anything, she's more so a rebel with her own specific cause, and she doesn't need followers, and I don't think it's trying to recruit any followers. Which leads you to question, how is this all going to end? In terms of 96, we know that only a handful of people live, but who's the leader in all this? Who's the one that convinced everybody that, hey, at this point we have no choice. Let's stop eating worms, let's stop eating bugs and all that, let's eat each other. Because as much as you can imagine Jackie saying something like this out of just whatever hatred she may have for somebody or just desperation, I don't know. With seeing them on mushrooms and almost trying to eat Travis, you get how potentially they may have gone to that point, but it's not clear with a sober mind how they would get to that point. So the first highlight would be Adam's death, and that's just because he has thus far had the most meaningful death on the show. And yes, technically you could say Jackie is the most notable death in terms of how much she's been developed and her character being someone prominent, but it's still not clear how Jackie died. For what we know, Jackie could have came home, committed suicide. Jackie could have possibly died of cancer, got hit by a reindeer. It's not even Christmas anymore. She could have possibly got hit by a car, or a litany of things that doesn't involve her dying in the wilderness. So, as much as her death technically is the first notable one we're told about, in terms of ones that we've seen happen and can confirm, Adam is the first major one, and I do want to say it doesn't necessarily put us on notice that anybody could die that hasn't been confirmed, but at least it gives us a sense that characters who potentially could mean something and whose deaths could reverberate throughout the rest of the season and series can happen. It may not happen that often, but at least it can happen. The second highlight for us is definitely Jeff's love for Shauna, if just because I think for a lot of us, Jeff has always seemed very suspect just because of how things are presented. His relationship with Shauna started with him cheating on Jackie, so their relationship ending with him cheating on her with another woman pretty much is his pattern, common sense, if not even karma to add on to it. But him pretty much revealing that the reason why he's done everything thus far, like deal with Bianca, the whole sneaking around thing, when it comes to that, is for Shauna's sake, essentially, so that she can, be a housewife, so that they can keep this home that they have. And when you add in that, when it comes to the affair, he kind of blows that off, and his main focus is he doesn't want his wife, the mother of his daughter, to go to jail, and that he's willing to go down and say that because of a crime of passion, he's the one that killed Adam. It makes you feel that we haven't given Jeff enough credit. It's just, if you watch a lot of shows that are dominant with female leads, more often than not, the men either are very bland or else they're just seen as complete jerks, assholes, what have you. So with Jeff, it's easy to kind of lump him in with that, but with everything that happens in this episode, you kind of get the sense that maybe he should be an exception. Granted, he tried to blackmail women in order to deal with his own issues with not adapting to the online market, but I don't know. It's him and Shauna are screwed up people who found each other, and it seems like their issues speak well with each other, and him doing all this to maintain the lifestyle that they have, maintain the relationship they have, and I think being each other's keeper of secrets to a certain degree. It's hard to not want to romanticize all that, especially since now that he knows all of Shauna's history because of reading her journals and him still choosing her. It's weird. It's like you should have romanticized all the things that he did and how messed up their relationship is, yet you want Shauna to be happy. Jeff has stepped up in a way that, yes, he may not be good in terms of generally being romantic or even in terms of being intimate, but he protects his wife against Jackie's parents. He protects their home against possible foreclosure. He's being a provider, is just maybe not doing the kind of love language that maybe we want to see, and that's the problem, rather than it being him and actually being a true issue. Our next highlight is the first signs of desperation when it comes to the ladies of 1996. How exactly the girls went from eating worms from a dead carcass, making mushroom soup and stuff like that, just figuring out different ways to create meals, to deciding to eat each other, was something that we didn't really get a real chance to see why of. And granted, Laura Lee died in a very tragic accident. When Taissa tried to go out to the wilderness to find civilization, that didn't work, so you kind of get an idea of why they could only look at each other for food. I don't think that the build-up to that has been in a way where you can actually imagine the transition. But thanks to Misty and the mushrooms, now you can kind of get it. Between possibly eating more mushrooms and going nuts because that's the only food that they see around, or potentially, going hungry, and because of that, them losing their minds, that helps you understand how we go from these girls being civilized and kind of like Jackie, where you can't imagine them going that far, to them potentially being ravenous and eating each other. Well, eating certain members. But like many things, we still don't fully know all the details. Like, how did they choose who was going to die? Why that person specifically. And in the beginning, we saw them. We saw what assumably was Charlotte running and then getting put into a trap. So comes the question of, are there different sects amongst the Yellowjackets? Were they all was one group, and rather than just kill somebody in their sleep or just make it, not so much like a hunter game type of situation. I don't know. I just really want some answers, and I don't necessarily like having this carrot dangled in front of me or just having this trail of small treats that's supposed to hold me over. I want the actual. I'm trying not to cuss as much as I usually do. I want the whole meal. I want the whole thing. I don't want this piecemeal appetizer stuff anymore. Which leads me to Misty's breakdown, and I feel that with Misty, we're often hard on her because it seems like all she really does is escalate situations. But when you think about it, and in the 25 years past, in the present day, nothing's changed for Misty. She still has issues with attracting guys. She still doesn't have any quality friendships. Her best friend basically is a parrot at this point. So, I mean, it's sad because you recognize that just with Natalie's apology, she's right there back in the fold. Never mind, it's very clear that the only reason why she's back in the fold is because they need to discard a body, and they know Misty's probably crazy enough to know how to do it. If not, that's being something she did back in the day. So, I think like with Shauna, I just want Misty to be happy, and also to like we saw with Shauna over the course of the season, just expand on who she is. And I think through Jessica, we kind of got that she's lonely enough that she could have I forgot the psychological term for it, but basically like a almost Beauty and the Beast type of relationship with Jessica. But I think when it comes to that, she's settling, and while settling with her is better than nothing, the best way to understand why Natalie basically wanting something out of Misty without really promising much, and her jumping on it is just because settling when it comes to Jessica is unfortunate, but it's an option. Being chosen, being asked to join the parade, that is what Misty has always wanted. And with Natalie offering that, even if it's not something like hanging out, getting a drink, going to eat, maybe having a girls' night or whatever, something is better than nothing. And it's certainly better than the option that she didn't really want and doesn't know long term what to do with. So off she goes, probably on the way getting some acid so that they can burn Adam's flesh. And who knows, with the way that Misty is, they may just burn this whole apartment down, so that just makes things easier on everybody. In terms of on the fence, as we've pretty much hinted throughout this whole recap and review, I just want answers. We're at the penultimate episode, and I feel like we've just gotten strung along for the whole season. We don't necessarily know of any notable characters' death at this point. Yes, Laura Lee died. Yes, Adam died this episode, but those are not core characters. What happened to Jackie is a question. What happened to Charlotte is a question. What happened to Van is a question. Those are people we've fairly gotten to know, or at least we feel like are essential for how things were back in the past, and yet we have not seen them in the present day. So what happened there? What happened with Travis? Who had such an elaborate way for him to die? Never mind who shut down, or should I say closed his bank account after he died. Yes, we have this new introduction of loan sharks when it comes to Jeff, but there's no clear means of thinking that Jeff had any involvement with Travis, since it doesn't seem that Travis had any friends back in the past. So those two interacting isn't really like to the forefront of you saying that's why this and that happened. And I could probably go on and on, since I know I've seen more than enough questions from you guys. I have my own that I'm probably forgetting, and I'm hoping that this is the type of finale where they give us answers and then don't do that BS where it gives us an ellipsis slash cliffhanger at the end, which makes you crave a second season that between COVID and schedules probably won't come until like 2023. In terms of what we think could happen next or hoping that could happen next, I so badly want some confirmations at this high school reunion. I want to know if Javi lied. I want to know if Javi lived, even though he's younger than him, so he may not show up, but he may show up, in place of Travis. I want to know if Charlotte lived. I want to know if, Akilah and Mario are also younger, so they may not show up, but maybe they will as a, Yellowjacket reunion. Heck, speaking of that, let's see if Van lived and whether or not with her. I'm still trying to understand how her face got fixed so easily. Like, it's been, a week and a half, and yet her scarring is minimal, and it just looks like she has, lipstick painted down her face in some type of ode to. It's 96, so I was going to say an ode to Chucky, but at that point, I don't think The Bride of Chucky came out for them to, pay homage to that. But either way, that scarring, even with what Akilah knows from Girl Scout, which appeared to be minimum, and then with what Misty knows from her babysitter Red Cross, it should not look that good. It should probably look a little bit infected and messed up. But considering Ben's been alive all this time, despite how his leg got chopped off, and Misty poisoned him, once or twice at this point, I guess these girls are far more lucky than we give them credit for. But getting back to what we think could happen next, high school reunion leads to some character surprises. I would definitely think that when it comes to Adam's body and investigation, Kevin is definitely going to be on that murder investigation just to bring him back into the fold. And I really do think that at this point, I feel that Misty may not reveal that Taissa paid Jessica to look into them, just because unless Taissa comes at her the wrong kind of way, she has no reason to use this. She had multiple opportunities with Natalie to try to boost who she was in Natalie's life, but she didn't do that. So I feel like she's going to let that dog lie. However, I do think that eventually she's going to probably kill Jessica. And the reason I think she's going to kill Jessica is that with us seeing Laura Lee die, with us seeing Adam die, I think this show is not going to really push itself too much to kill off major characters. Instead, it's going to start looking at people who are expendable. So definitely I expect to see Akilah and Mari die, and then in present time, Jessica would definitely be somebody that they're going to kill off. The only question is, how are they going to kill him off, and will we see that in the season finale, or would it be something that happens in season 2? Also, something we're hoping to see is that symbol in some type of information, because at this point it feels like we haven't seen that symbol in multiple episodes. No one really acknowledges it. And I would even say at this point it almost seems like an afterthought. Like it's something to, as a lot of people keep mentioning, something that you can kind of compare to Lost in terms of they present it now and they just build up to it properly later. I can't really speak on that since I didn't watch Lost. It was back when I was more focused on shows like Ugly Betty, so I don't understand the reference, but I get it to a certain degree. Oh, and one last thing. I kind of want to jump off the bandwagon of thinking that Javi killed Travis, and maybe that with the introduction of Bambi and these loan shark people, maybe Travis was low on money because the life he lived, and maybe he got involved with those people, and that might have been why he died, especially in such an elaborate way. And who knows? As noted earlier, we don't know what exactly the general population knows about when it comes to the Yellowjackets. So that symbol, as much as it might seem like a secret to them, who knows if they read every last book, every last article when it comes to what people know. Never mind between Travis maybe mentioning it, they're going through his stuff or whatever. That could be how they got that symbol involved, to maybe wear off anybody like the Yellowjackets, possibly trying to look further into it. It's just a theory, and as we've seen thus far, like when people thinking that Adam is Javi, Some fairies don't pan out, but other fairies, like Jeff being a black man, will do. So we'll find out what of these ideas and thoughts might actually come to be, and what were just thoughts about what could happen.